Hello everyone and welcome back to the Crafty Yellow Camper. Today we're going to make a fancy fold card. This is the card that we're going to make. I didn't actually make this. My lovely friend Anne Ronsky from the Ashy Ink Spot made this as part of a team swap. And I liked it so much I thought I would see if I could replicate it. And Anne, if you're watching this video, I hope you don't mind. We have a saying in Stampin' Up, which is to case a card, so that's copy and share everything. And basically it's a compliment if somebody copies your card. So I'm sure you'll agree Anne's is lovely. It's got several different layers inside here, and then it folds up to fit in a standard C6 card. Okay, so let's get started. So I have gone ahead and cut quite a lot of my bits and pieces, so you don't need to watch me with a paper trimmer. So this is the base of the card. I think Anne had probably used real red. I'm using shaded spruce, and this is cut from an A4 piece of cardstock. It's the entire length of the cardstock, but it's cut down the length at 14.8, so it's 14.8 wide of the cardstock, or 14.8 deep, however you like to look at that. Okay, and then the card has been scored at 10.5, which is here, 18, which is here, and 25.5, which is here, and that's the end of the cardstock. Okay, and then it's been folded with a valley fold, a mountain fold, and then another valley fold, and when it folds up you get those 3 layers. Okay, so that's the base of the card. To do the layers inside, the main layer is 10 by 14.5, just to give us a little mat round the edge, and I don't know if you can see, I've gone ahead and embossed that with the lovely snowflake embossing folder, which is part of the snowflake suite. And I'm just going to use some glue to stick that into my card. I figured that if you're watching this, you might not have all day to spend. Well, you might if you've been furloughed as of next week, but you might not have all day to spend, so it would cut down some time if I pre-prepared some of the bits. Okay, I'm using wet glue for 2 reasons. One is because it gives us a little bit of wiggle room to get it straight. The second reason is with an embossed layer, sometimes you need a little bit more glue to help it grip. Okay, so the next layer that we're going to add is another piece of Whisper White, and that is going to fit into this middle section here, but first we need to stamp it. So I'm just going to put that card to one side. I've already mounted up my stamps, and I'm using the new Wishes and Wonder stamp set, which comes with a set of North Pole Wonder dies. So this is the stamp set. You can see you've got a sleigh, a stag, a special delivery, made in the North Pole, reindeer air freight. May the wonder of Christmas stay with you throughout the coming year. Wishing you the happiest season of all, and some really nice mistletoe and a to and from. So lots of uses for that. That will come in handy for tags as well as cards and packaging, that kind of thing. And within that set, the dies, there is actually a tag die which cuts your hole out for you. So that makes that really nice and simple to make tags. There is a die for the sleigh, there is a die for the stag that is a stamp, and then there is another stag. So this is the one with antlers. There isn't a stamp to go with this one, that's just a die. There's this really nice surround for the Made in the North Pole stamp with the sort of medallion or medal edge, and a round one that will fit that North Pole element. Then there is some mistletoe leaves. There is one to cut out the mistletoe stamp that we're going to use. And then there's this lovely little dinky die with a pointy edge. And these little dots. So if you wanted to cut out berries for the mistletoe, that's what they're for. Would equally work if you cut that out of red cardstock to make holly berries. You can see there are different sizes on that one die, and then some more little leaves. Okay, so what we're going to do is we aren't going to actually do any die cutting. This is just going to be stamping, but I will be putting up another card a little bit later on which has some die cut images in it. So this is the panel for our card that's going to go in the middle. So if I refer you back to Anne's again, this is the embossed piece, and she's used the snowflake embossing folder. And then this is the piece we're working on now. So she's stamped some holly leaves there, and then she's put her sentiment in there. So we're going to do the same thing. So I wanted to use the this one, waving it at you, but I can actually read it to you. It's "May the wonder of Christmas stay with you throughout the coming year." We're using shaded spruce, so we're going to use some shaded spruce ink to stamp that. And I'm just inking up my pad, on my stamp I should say, on my pad. Now these are red rubber. Now I have deliberately over inked that. If I hold that up to the camera, if you are a little bit enthusiastic with your ink pad, can you see how I've caught the ink all the way around the stamp? Now, if I was to stamp that on our piece of cardstock, we would get what's called a shadow. So that would pick up the ink all the way around the edge. So I'm just going to, off camera, just stamp that off, and I'll show you actually. So you can see, please excuse my scruffy piece of paper, but you can see where I've stamped that off. If I had stamped that on my cardstock, look, we would have got the shadow all the way round, and that's not what we want to do. So I'm going to just quickly clean that off on my chamois. But just a little tip there, especially with the narrower stamps, be very careful to be light on your ink pad, because otherwise you'll get that shadow and you will end up having to start again. So, as I said before, I deliberately inked it up hard in order to show you that. So this time we're just going to give it a gentle ink, and you can see, if you turn it over, sorry, I just knocked the camera there, you can see if you've covered all the sentiment, and I've got a little piece here. So I'm just going to go back in and add a little bit more ink to that, and you can see that sentiment is inked up fine, and I've managed to avoid getting ink around the side, which means that we can then go in, you watch, I'll put ink on it now with my fingers. We can then go in and put our sentiment in. Now this will be the panel that people will write on, so we're going to put our sentiment in the middle, and I'm not actually sure that that's straight. It's really difficult when I'm filming to get it straight. Okay, and then I wanted to have another image in there, just for a little bit of interest, as Anne did, and I really like this stag. So I'm going to just grab the stag out, and I'm going to grab some soft suede to stamp him in. And again, with these stamps, just be careful that you don't pick up the ink from around the edge, otherwise you will end up with that halo effect. And I'm going to stamp him down here. Okay, so that's our middle layer for the card. So I'm just going to close these ink pads up, because I know what I'm like. My desk seems to get smaller when I'm doing a video, and then it seems to be never as much room. Okay, so we're going to add that section in with some wet glue. Again, as I said, just gives us a little bit of wiggle room when we're lining it up. Tape runners and all the rest of it are all very well, but once they're down, and they don't like coming back up again without ripping your cardstock. Again, without sticking my head in the camera, I'm hoping that's level. Okay, yeah, and I can see now that greeting's not dreadfully level, but it'll be okay. Okay, so for the next two sections, we're going to use some DSP, or designer series paper, and I'm using the 'Tis the Season paper, which is a 6x6 collection with a selection of different papers in it. I'm just going to find it in the catalogue so I can show it to you, because it will be quicker than me flicking through the paper pack. So this is these are the papers here with all different things on. Actually, they're not, I don't think. I stand corrected. No, they're not. They're these ones. Sorry about that. These ones here, 'Tis the Season papers. So hopefully you can see those. It's £10.75, but you get 48 sheets, 4 each of 12 double-sided designs. So that's quite a lot of paper. 6x6 is quite a good usable size, because you don't really have too much waste from those. So that's what we're going to be doing and using. And I have chosen this paper, which has got some really nice mistletoe on the front, which coordinates with one of the stamps we're going to use. And the back has got this really nice jolly red on it. Okay, So for this section, we are going to just use the paper just as it is. And this piece of DSP is cut to the same size as this piece of cardstock, which is 7 by 14.5. So this one was 10 by 14.5. This one's 7 by 14.5. And this next one here is, again, 7 by 14.5. And I can't decide which way around to use it because I really like that green, but we're going to use the other side, so I think we'll go for the red, just to add a splash of colour to our card. Okay, nice coating of glue on there. Don't put your glue too close to the edges, otherwise it squidges out and then you'll have be trying to wrestle with a glue rubber to get it off. Okay, so we're just going to line that up there. So that's we've got 1, 2, 3 sections done now. Now we've got this last section here when we fold the card up, and I'm going to use a piece of the mistletoe paper on there just to give that a layer there. And this one is cut at 4 by 14.5. So we're just going to add that in there. Okay, so we're going to pop that on the front of our card. So remember to make sure you get it on the right side, okay? And I'm unfolding the card so I don't get glue onto the pieces we've already stamped and stuck on. Okay, so that's that piece there. So far, that's what we've got. So we've now got our 3 layers. So we've got our back, our bit to write on, nice piece of Jolly DSP, and a piece of that lovely mistletoe paper. But when we open it out inside, this piece is going to be bare. So what I've done is I've just used the trimmings. Now from this 6x6 sheet, I cut a very small piece off one of the lengths, because it's square, obviously. And that gave us the 7 by 14.5 for this piece. It also gave us the 14.5 by 4 for this piece. Now I got my measurements in a twangle and I actually cut this piece down. If I hadn't have cut this piece down, this piece would also have been 4 centimetres wide, which would have fitted perfectly on there. Now, I don't like to waste paper, so we are just going to put it down the middle of the section, just so that when we open up the card, all the pieces of cardstock are covered that we're looking at. So just as a little feature, I'm just going to put that in the middle there, just to add a little something so that's not just bare cardstock. So there we are. So we've got our layers. Okay, now we need to add a little bit of decoration. When you cut the card base down to 14.8, that will leave you with a strip the same length as the sheet of cardstock, and I have cut off a piece of that, and this measures 9 centimetres long by 5 centimetres wide, and I have just cut a V into the end. Now we do have some of our punchers will do that for you, some of the sort of banner punchers, and one of the tag punchers I think does it as well, but I'm lazy, so I just eyeballed it and cut it up. So if you haven't got a punch to do that with, the thing to do is find the middle of your cardstock, cut up from the bottom, and then cut in from each corner, which will make your V. And then I've gone ahead and cut a small piece of Whisper White, and we are going to put that on there with something stamped on it. So what I thought we would do, oh actually no, I've changed my mind actually about that. We are going to use this express delivery made in the North Pole stamp. Okay, and that banner is going to sit on there like that, so then this can sit in the middle there. So what I think we might actually do is go for a little bit of red. Now I can't make my mind up whether this red is cherry cobbler or real red. What do you reckon? I think it might be real red, so we'll go with real red rather than cherry cobbler. So I'll just pop that one back. So we've got our stamp. If it isn't the right colour, we can turn it over and do it on the other side. There's always 2 sides to cardstock. The side we're using and the emergency side. Right, okay, so we have got that there. So I am going to stamp that on there. I made in the North Pole. Okay, and do we think that matches? Yeah, that's fine. I think it would have been fine either way, actually. And then if you remember, I told you there was a die in there that matched that circle, which is this one here, which will cut that out and not cut the writing off. Sorry, push that up so you can see. Won't cut the writing off because you'll notice that the writing protrudes from that circle. And then if I wanted to, I could go ahead and layer this one up as well, or I could just cut that one so we end up with that frilly shape. Stamping and die cutting on the hoof here. I'm just wanting to see if my piece of paper, no, it won't fit on the piece of paper, so we'll use the circle one. Okay, so if you'll excuse me for 2 seconds, I'm just gonna jog over to the other side of my craft room and push this through my big shot because I didn't anticipate die cutting, so I hadn't already die cut this. So I'm just lining it up to get it as central as I can. If you can hear noises, that's me on the die cutting machine. There we are. And I'm back. And here it is, cut out. Now, some people might like the clean look of that going on there, like that. I'm not one of them. So I'm just going to ink up around the edge of there. That's all a little bit too stark white for me, if I'm honest. I don't know what I've done with my sponge daubers, so I'm just going to nick a little bit of, if you're like me and you're always losing little things like that, sponge daubers are great, but they disappear quickly and I often end up throwing them in the bin accidentally. So this is just a piece of kitchen sponge that I've cut up and it does the job just as well. Okay, so we'll get that ink out of the way. So there's our little inked up shape, and what we're going to do is pop that onto our banner, and that will fit over there like that, but I think that's a little bit plain. So what I'm going to do is go back to my shaded spruce ink, and I am going to grab the mistletoe stamp, which wouldn't have fitted on to our small piece of white, but will fit now. Again, see, I've done it again. So let's just stamp that off and clean that off. I got a little bit too enthusiastic in my excitement about being on YouTube. Okay, so let's ink that up gently. Try not to get it on the edges, and I'm just going to stamp that on there. Now I know our circle's going to go over the top, but that will show a little bit behind it. So we're going to put our circle, yes, it covers up the lovely mistletoe, but we'll use that somewhere else. We're just going to put it there so it's got a little bit of leaf coming out behind it. And then I don't know if you remember, I told you there was a sprig die. I really wasn't anticipating die cutting, so you'll have to excuse me running off to the die cutting machine again with a piece of scrap in hand. Off I go again. So I'm just going to die cut a couple. I think speed die cutting should become an Olympic sport. I think most demonstrators fly backwards and forwards between their die cutting machine and their desk if they aren't lucky enough to have a big enough desk to put it on. Alright, that's one. Let's just have another one. If you're anything like me and bulk make your Christmas cards, you're probably suffering quite badly with RSI now, repetitive die cutting. So actually it'd be RDC, wouldn't it? Ignore me. Had a bad night's sleep. Right, so there's a couple of little sprucey bits. And what we're going to do is just go in for some of our this is the frost white ink that we had last year. I'm just going to see if I can manage to get a little bit on a clean, yeah, there we go, on a clean piece of sponge, and I'm just going to ink that over the edges of our mistletoe just to give it a little bit of definition. You'll notice that I'm taking the colour out of the lid. It's way easier. If you tip the bottle over, you risk spilling it. The bottle's got a ball bearing in it, which helps shake it up a little bit and mix it up. Right, so we just go over with that. So let's get rid of that. Okay, so that's that. So just to add a little bit of more interest, we'll pop these pieces in on there. So let's just put a dimensional behind there. We're not going to see it because we're going to cover it up with the circle that we've just die cut. I'm just grabbing some dimensional. So what I'm going to do is put a dimensional in the middle of that mistletoe, take the top off, and then I can layer up my little mistletoe leaves I've just cut, and you'll see I'm putting those diagonally across there. And then I can add another dimensional to our circle. Let's get this in the right place down there, I think. Take the backing off that. And then we can pop that over the top like that, and that just gives us a little bit more interest. And then what we're going to do is I am going to put that, I think, on some dimensionals as well. So I'm just going to pop a couple along the edge. Now you could go all fancy. You could do this banner made out of DSP. You could emboss that as well. You could ink around the edge of that. But I think that that finishes it off quite nicely. So there we go. We've got our 3 layers when we pull it open, or 4 layers I should say. Inside we've got space to write in the middle, and when it's folded up it looks like that, which means it should stand on a mantelpiece with parts of it open. Okay, so that's one of the cards using those new Wishes and Wonder stamps and dies, and I'll be back shortly with another card using those for you. Hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I will see you again soon. Happy stamping!